This podcast is brought to you by Cintas, helping keep your automotive business looking great from showroom to service bay, with essentials like durable workwear, absorbent shop towels, and high-performance floor mats. Get ready for the workday at cintas.com/automotive.
Welcome to Daily Drive for Monday, March 30th, 2026. I'm Kellen Walker in New York City. Today on the show, General Motors expects massive revenue growth from its OnStar and Super Cruise subscriptions. Ford CEO Jim Farley's compensation rises despite record recalls. And Audi plans to phase out its 5-cylinder engine in Europe by 2027. Plus, managing editor Jerry Hirsch sits down with Dennis Fritsch, Executive Vice President of the Safety and Motion Division at Aumovio.
So there are multiple advantages of these technologies. First of all, talking about braking performance, because that's clearly related to safety.
Let's run through all the news you need to know to keep up in the auto industry. General Motors expects its investment in subscriptions to start paying off. GM currently operates 2 subscriptions and Super Cruise. Today, they're a small but quickly growing piece of the automaker's total revenue. But CFO Paul Jacobson sees the potential for nearly exponential growth. The subscriptions logged about $2.7 billion in realized revenue for the company in 2025. That's up from $1.7 billion realized in 2020. And in 2026, the company expects to generate $3.1 billion in realized revenue. Ford CEO Jim Farley made over $27.5 million in total revenue last year, the most he's made since he started at Ford in late 2020. The automaker exceeded initial quality targets last year, despite setting a record for the total number of recalls. But initial quality is a more reliable metric for progress to Ford, as many recalls include older models. The automaker reached just 64% of its earnings targets in 2025, but it reached the maximum 200% of quality goals related to vehicles with 0 and 3 months in service. And Audi plans to phase out its 5-cylinder engine in Europe by mid-2027. The engine doesn't meet the European Union's upcoming Euro 7 emission standards. The 5-cylinder engine has been a cornerstone of Audi's brand for decades, but upgrading the engine to comply with the new emission standards would require extensive hardware changes and investment. Instead, Audi opted to focus its spending on electric vehicles. The engine will still be available in select markets, including North America. And those are today's headlines. You can find more details on all those stories at autonews.com. Chinese automakers are rapidly entering new markets with compelling products and attractive pricing. They're making an impression, but dealers in Mexico have mixed feelings about these brands. Here to tell us more is Lawrence Iliff, who covers EVs, Tesla, Lucid, and Rivian for us at Automotive News. Lonnie, welcome back to Daily Drive.
It's great to be here.
All right, Lonnie, what are some of the growing pains that Chinese automakers are experiencing in Mexico?
Well, it's a really fascinating story because during COVID, there were no car supply for, the traditional Mexican brands, right? Factories were closing, but China has a different supply chain. China has a different auto market, kind of separated from the West. So all the Chinese brands went into Mexico because the tariffs were pretty low, and they started selling cars, but they just kind of, they rushed in and started selling cars, and the auto business obviously has, a many-legged stool. And one of them is obviously customer service, customer support, after sales service, right? And so people did like the cars. The prices were good. People bought a lot of cars, but then they found out they had like a collision, that the parts for to repair the collision may not be available for weeks or months. And, there were other customer service things, like some of the installations weren't ready, like for service, but you have to get your car serviced. And so it was just, the growing pains were kind of like rushing into the market and then, trying to get the pieces together later. And of course, you had a bunch of angry consumers. And I talked to a guy in the UK who is both an auto analyst and a dealer of Chinese brands. And he said there was like some of that happened as well in the UK, where they rushed in, sales, and then kind of the infrastructure to support those sales took some time to build up and customers got upset.
Now, we know it's not a question of if, but when, Chinese brands make it to the US, but what does this mean for US dealers who might be interested in Chinese brands?
Well, I talked to an auto consultant in Mexico who's the former president of Toyota de Mexico, which is the top rated brand for customer satisfaction in Mexico and for factory dealer relations. And he basically said that, you have to do your homework, right? You have to find out the companies. Do they have strong backing in China? Are they, planning service and customer support? Because like he said, you don't sell a car once. You sell a car 3, 4, 5 times to the same person, to the same family, and then to their kids. That's how you build up a business: service, customer service, repeat customers. And so he said that as US dealers and Canadian dealers, remember this is happening in Canada now, with a few brands entering with low number of vehicles with reduced quotas, but still they're entering, and that you have to pick and choose your partners. You have to do your research. And it's interesting because Xpeng, the Chinese automaker, announced just last week that they're launching in Mexico, right? Even though there's like 30 brands there already, they're launching in Mexico. And they explicitly said, we already have a parts center. We are committed to service. They're obviously aware of what's going on, and they're saying, we're going to do it right. And so for US dealers, Canadian dealers, you need to find a company with kind of attitude.
Lonnie, as usual, always insightful. Thank you so much for joining me.
It was great to be here.
Coming up, we'll hear from Dennis Fritsch, Vice President of the Safety and Motion Division at Aumovio. That's next on Daily Drive.
Are you a dealer creating a workplace culture your employees are proud to be part of? Applications are now open for the 2026 Automotive News Best Dealerships to Work For program. This isn't just an award, it's a chance to get real insight into what's working at your dealership and where you can improve. And we've expanded the categories this year, recognizing everything from technician experience and leadership development to AI enablement and employee retention. The registration deadline is April 17th. Find out more and apply at autonews.com.
Your day-to-day is hectic. Don't waste time juggling vendors. Cintas helps keep your auto shop looking great from showroom to service bay. Get durable workwear from your team's favorite brands, absorbent shop towels to tackle oil and grease, and high-performance floor mats to help keep your lobby clean. All picked up, washed, and returned back to you with no upfront cost required. Get a single source partner to keep you firing on all cylinders. Visit cintas.com/automotive to get ready for the workday.
Welcome back to Daily Drive. I'm Kellen Walker. Brake systems are evolving rapidly, moving away from traditional hydraulic designs toward dry brake technology that could reshape vehicle engineering. On the latest episode of the Automotive News Shift podcast, managing editor Jerry Hirsch traveled to Sweden to test new brake technology with Dennis Fritsch, Executive Vice President of the Safety and Motion Division at Aumovio. They talked about the advantages of dry brake calipers, how the technology works, and when we might see it in production vehicles. Here's a piece of that conversation.
We're here in the frozen tundra of Sweden in Arvidsjaur testing some of these new products, mostly braking in the ice and the snow. Dennis, one of the things that you guys are developing is what you call the dry brake caliper. This is a brake that has no hydraulic fuel. Tell us the advantages of this and how far off is this from production?
Yeah. So there are multiple advantages of these technologies. First of all, talking about braking performance, because that's clearly related to safety. We are seeing advantages when it comes to braking distance, stopping distance. Here we are talking about meters, what we can achieve with these new technologies. And at the same time, we also see cost advantages for the final customer. Because of maintenance topics, it's significantly less maintenance or even maintenance free over lifetime of the entire product. And we are seeing cost advantages for the car manufacturers within their assembly processes. We are pretty advanced in the development of these technologies. We will have first SOPs in the year 27 and 28. Depending on which configuration, there are multiple steps of the dry brake technologies. But we are clearly advancing in this direction with SOPs in 27 and 28.
So this is a brake that's completely electronic. And so there's computers and wires, and you step on the brake pedal and it sends an electronic signal to the brakes in each corner of the vehicle, and it stops the vehicle. This takes out all the hydraulic fluid, the hoses, and I think that there's an estimate that's like 20, 25 pounds of equipment. But what does this do to the vehicle architecture? How does this make a vehicle easier to design?
Yeah. First of all, again, talking about hydraulics, that's the most obvious part. You have a lot of hydraulics, what you have to bring finally into each and every corner. You have the center device, and from the center device to the corner. There's a lot of assembly effort on the one hand side. But again, also for the car itself, it's having a lot of advantages. For example, when it comes to size scalability, it's much easier to make a cable a little bit longer than just making a brake hose is longer. Brake hose, because there's liquid inside, depending on low temperature, that's a different, let's say, fluid behavior depending on the length of the vehicle. So it shows once again what the difference is between just making a cable a little bit longer and a brake hose.
When do you think this will actually be in production cars?
If you distinguish a bit between the semi-dry brake solutions and the full dry brake solutions, so we are targeting years 27 and 28 to be in series production, first small scale. We are clearly seeing interest increasing of customers. So we, let's say for this, from 27 to 2030, we would rather still call it a low scale, low volume application. But as soon as we are in the 2030s, we are massively seeing the installation rates going up, at least in our forecasts.
Let's go back to that term you use, semi-dry system. Now, this is a split system where you have electronic brakes in the back and you have more traditional hydraulic brakes in the front. And my understanding is that first, this creates a redundancy in the brakes. So if you had some failure on one side, the other side could take over, the front could take over for the back, vice versa. The other thing is that this provides a bit more braking power. Do you see this as a good use for commercial vehicles and heavy load vehicles? Tell me how this would work.
Exactly. So especially the semi-dry brake solutions where we have hydraulics in the front and electric calipers in the rear. So they're especially a very nice application, not only, but especially for these kind of applications for truck business, not like truck businesses. One of the advantages, again, the length scalability. So you have all the hydraulics on the front, and that's more or less the stable part. And then scalability of the length is just coming again by the length of the cables. So there's a certain level of scalability achieved by this technology. But also when it comes to braking performance, you're still having the hydraulic high performance part on the front axle. And that's also again important when it comes to fallback solutions, when it comes to failures which have to be prevented.
My understanding is that you already have a customer for this system. I guess you're not going to tell us the name, but tell us a bit about this customer. Where are they? What do they want to use it for?
Yeah. So it's a European-based customer, but offering their products globally. It's also about commercial vehicles. Their strategy is also having a certain scalability in their platforms. And that's why also a component technology, which is offering scalability, is perfectly made for a component, which is finally also being used or in a scalable platform. It's commercial vehicles. So cost of the car, operating costs, lifetime costs is also crucial for their final customers, which are in very competitive commercial businesses like transport businesses. So these are the typical applications of this area.
For the dry brakes, where do you think we're going to see them first? The complete electronic brake-by-wire systems. Which OEMs will adopt them first?
Yeah, that's difficult to say who's finally the first one. We see basically all OEMs are very interested. Every OEM is asking for this, and we have a lot of proof of concepts and design studies and evaluations. So I can tell you that most of the customers are very interested in dry brake technologies. The question is which one is finally the one who's bringing it first into application, and then in which application. We are seeing more customers when it comes to the full dry applications. We are seeing more customers asking first for high-end applications, like in luxury cars or in sports cars. But that's not a digital direction. So it's just a tendency we are seeing a bit more, but finally we are seeing customers in all segments and customers in all markets asking for these technologies.
What about the vehicle architecture? Are we seeing this primarily as an electric vehicle technology?
Primarily, yes, which means not excluded to make it in combustion, but overall there are certain architectural advantages of e-vehicles where you have a certain centralized architecture. It's certainly an advantage to be in a more, let's say, up-to-date and a more modern architecture than being in legacy architectures. Again, not necessarily, but we are seeing advantages to be in these architectures.
You can hear the full conversation between Aumovio's Dennis Fritsch and our own Jerry Hirsch on the latest episode of the Automotive News Shift podcast, available now wherever you get your podcasts. That's Daily Drive for today. I'm Kellen Walker. Thanks to Automotive News executive producer Jake Neer, as well as our own Riley Hodder, Frank Volt, Michael Martinez, Lauren Seilift, and John Irwin for their reporting for today's podcast. You can get the latest news on automakers' subscriptions, CEO compensation, powertrain changes, and everything happening in the auto industry at autonews.com. Come back tomorrow to hear what Patrick D. Hahn, head of petroleum analysis at GasBuddy.com, has to say about gas prices.
When you see interruptions or delays or weather, anything that can be very impactful to either one of those balances, supply or demand, can really tip oil prices in a way that send gas prices soaring or plummeting.
We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you think of the show and the topics we covered today. Send us an email at dailydrive@autonews.com or leave us a voicemail at 313-444-2774. And if you enjoyed the podcast, remember to like, leave a review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.